Hello, everybody. It's Pat and Zack, the Pat and Zack episode of Boxcars. Thanks, Pat, featuring Pat on vocals.
I was trying to reenact our podcast music.
It's tough to do a cappella, but one day we'll get everyone in the car and we'll all rehearse our stuff.
We'll edit.
We'll become a cool... editing would save it. So welcome to episode 2, I believe, of Boxcars. It's just Pat and Zack today. Chad was, somewhere.
What a loser.
I know.
Eating places.
It happens. Somewhere. But we figured, if you're new to the program, which, there's only 2 episodes, so,
there's a 50-50 chance.
There's a 50-50 chance that you're new and have no idea what this is. So this is sort of a mini episode separate from the regular podcast where we just talk about stuff while we're driving. We're currently driving if you can't, hear the various car noises. Thankfully, no sirens.
Yeah. There'll be a bonus crash somewhere in the episode. If you can spot it, call in at that time. You might save a life, and we'll send you some cookies or something and a thank you card.
Yeah. Now, this will probably go up later, so you won't save a life. But, hey, you might. So, we're going to talk about some stuff. What do you want to talk about first, Pat?
We're just about to start talking about Banner Saga.
So, I'm a huge fan of the Banner Saga. I have always been a huge fan of the Banner Saga since it came out. There's only, 2 right now that are out.
I've heard nothing but good things about it, but I haven't had any experience, so please tell me all about it.
So, the Banner Saga is essentially a game. It's made by Stoic, which was a studio that was produced the only game they've done is the Banner Saga when they first came out. And it's like a 3-man studio. So, it's very small. But they managed to make a really, really good game for a 3-man studio.
I feel like such a terrible fan when I bring this up. I'm a fan of another studio that was made by 2 guys. People who made Spaz. They now finally released the sequel, but I have yet to try it because it looks like a different game. But go on.
Right. But the Banner Saga is essentially it's like a fantasy Viking. The best way to describe the gameplay is Final Fantasy Tactics meets the Oregon Trail.
Now, Final Fantasy Tactics, that's the...
So it's basically your standard,
turn-based?
Isometric, turn-based, Combat 1. It has, a grid for combat. The only difference is there's not much in the first game in the way of environments.
Okay.
There's no, heights, there's no vertical. It's all just, a plane, and you're fighting each other on. But where you position your guys is important. Also, they do a really neat thing with the armor versus strength mechanic, where strength is your health, armor is sort of what enemies need to chip away before they can do lots of damage. You can always damage either armor or health, but the more armor you damage, the more damage they'll take. The more strength you'll damage, the weaker they hit.
Oh, but do they... So you're basically investing in one path or another?
Each battle, it depends. So, for instance, some...
Well, I'm saying when you're...
Yeah, when you level up guys, you do that as well. And when you're picking targets, you also do that. So, for instance, you may have your archers focus on breaking armor. And as they break the armor down, then when they finally close distance with your melee combat guys, those guys can hit them really hard. Or you're just, maybe you have a bleed ability that you use on a guy, and then every turn he takes some strength damage, so that by the time he does get to your guys, he's unable to pierce anything except for your armor.
Okay, the more I play things like D&D, the more I realize a lot of these games really represent these very classic D&D mechanics, where it's a grid, the movement system, how you fight, how much you can do with everything on a turn, but. We digress a little bit. Tell us about what makes the Banner Saga game so interesting. The story. That's what I've heard of.
The story is very good. And it's not a sort of genre that you'd normally pick up on, because it's essentially a Nordic apocalypse.
That's kind of what it looks like.
Well, here's the thing. So the sun has stopped moving.
Oh, so is it
in the
like,
world.
Is it like one half of the planet is ice, the other half is...
Well, no one goes to the other half. That's the thing. You're on the one continent that you know of. And essentially the sun has stopped moving in the sky, and prayers to your gods have gone sort of unanswered. Also, it's like the nations of Man and Varl, who are like giant horned men, have essentially made a peace treaty with each other, where the Varl are, fighting these horrible black armored monstrosities called Dredge that no one can understand, that have been coming out of the north. And in exchange, the kingdoms of Man have been giving them tithes of gold and things like that.
To like stem the tide of attacks?
Yes. Well, it's just to to secure the frontier, essentially. And no one has seen Dredge for a while. So you play as the point of view switches a lot, but the main guy that you follow is Rook, who is a simple village hunter who lives in a village on the far outskirts.
The classic man who rises to power.
Well, he's a simple woodsman.
Hero.
He's a simple woodsman who has some basic skills. He has a daughter, Alette, who is a archer woman, and then they have their Varl friend, Ivor, and he's the only
professional archer woman.
Varl. Yeah, exactly. Well, she's very new. She's very new to archery and stuff. But they are out hunting in the woods, and, all of a sudden they run into a Dredge, and they're like, whoa, Dredge are never this far south. And then the Dredge are attacking their village, and then they have to leave with their village and go off. And then on the other side, there's like a different wagon that has the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Men and the Crown Prince of the Varl and the Varl's brother. And they're like, it's a big Varl caravan that's transporting a wagon laden with the taxes that they've collected to the Varl Kingdom. And there's a whole adventure there that happens. And it's just really well done. It's really neat seeing, so like, as you're traveling, every once in a while you'll stop and at like huge god stones, which are like the etched carvings of like a god or a deity, or even like a monster of some monument or something. And when you stop there, typically like some people are giving like worship and stuff, but there's a lot of people that are like, the gods are dead, the sun doesn't stop, like the sun never sets.
Well, essentially their world has, as they know it, has come to an end.
Right.
And is now very harsh and unforgiving. You can understand why they might be a little upset.
And halfway through, it gets super obvious that their world is ending. There's a big event that happens, which I'm not going to spoil because it's a super impressive event when it does happen.
Very cinematic?
Super cinematic. Well, what's nice about the Banner Saga is that it's a very cinematic game overall, because the actual traversing... oh, man, okay, this art style, I could go on for days. Because
well, I don't have that much gas.
I know you don't, but I'll try to keep it brief. It's essentially, if you remember like older Disney cartoons, like Camelot, like the old like King Arthur and stuff.
Yes.
It's that style essentially, like a modified version of that style.
Okay.
And then it's just very well done. Like you're sitting there watching essentially watercolor portraiture.
Ah, okay.
And it is just beautiful to look at. Everything they did such a great job. And meanwhile, there's this like beautiful. I think the name of the composer is Austin Winry, and you can go to his Bandcamp, and it is just full of like music from these games, and it is all beautiful orchestra pieces that meet like the same like Nordic feeling of the game, and they did such a great job capturing like it's Viking Oregon Trail, and you really get a sense of that.
Okay, I can appreciate that.
There's a lot of choose your own, like a lot of the action happens when you're not like in straight combat. There's a lot of stuff that's happening like via text, and they do a good job of having your choices sort of matter. Well,
you said it was a small company, so it's understandable when somebody says like a lot of the dialogue is on very text.
Well, there's limited.
Two people don't have a lot of voice actors,
right? But it's but they do a very good job with what they have. And there's a lot of like making the wrong choice and having that result in like a named party member dying. Essentially, like there's one very early on where it's like you can choose to either have this guy try to defend someone. You can either try to shoot it with your bow because you're an expert marksman, or you can just like shout. And you being an expert marksman, that's the right option. And neither of your party members die. But if the other two options, that one named party member will, get crushed by a dredge or something. But what's neat about that is, like...
So anyone interested in buying the game, take note.
Take some notes.
That your expert archer is pretty good at
is good at archery.
Things.
I mean, you'd expect them to be good at archery, but, like... It's just, like, some of them are going to be sort of obvious, but others won't be so obvious, and others will be, like, kind of difficult choices to make. And those will affect, what characters you have in your party throughout the game. And that's really interesting because, like, you're putting points into them, because the resource system, the way it works is...
is it communal?
Sort of. So, it's essentially communal insofar as you have to spend renown points. Or requisition points, I think it's called. You spend a single sort of set of points.
Making me think of Dragon Age.
Well, you use it to level up guys, you use it to buy items, and you use it to buy supplies for your caravan.
Oh.
And there's only a limited amount. So there are whole sections of the game where, like, you're out, like, if you didn't bulk up on supplies earlier in the game, your people are starving and, like, dying because you didn't get enough supplies because you wanted to level up your crew of, like, 5 guys.
Yes.
Which is kind of neat. I like how they do it. I think there was a really weird bug where there was no way to get requisition points or supplies during, like, a certain stretch in, like, a desert, but they've since sort of added a couple extra. And, like, how you deal with the rest of your caravan also affects stuff. Like, at one point there's a drunk who is constantly getting into, like, being drunk. At one point he, like, accidentally runs off a wagon, and another time he says dredge, and, like, when there's no dredge. And you can sort of decide what to do with him. And one option leads, like, the rest of the caravan to kill him. Another option leads him to be physically, like, they beat him viciously, and then he never wants to touch a drink ever again because last time they beat him so viciously. And another one, he just, like, stumbles to his death off a cliff because you didn't stop him properly. But again, that affects the morale of your caravan. That affects who's willing to stay, who's willing to leave.
I imagine people aren't always thrilled about somebody being killed or pummeled violently.
Well, and they do some good options. Like in Banner Saga 2, they have one where you're going across, like, some bridge that it's very timed.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Banner Saga 2. Yeah. Not now, without provoking any spoilers.
Yep.
But it sounds like a calamity is happening in Banner Saga 1.
Yep.
The Banner Saga 2, does it take place in tandem or as a sequel?
Sequel.
Okay.
You're still following. You're still following the main caravan from Banner Saga 1, but again, the POV shift happens a lot, and that covers a separate caravan who's a separate character. And in Banner Saga 2, that lets you play an entirely different character. Like, your main caravan is, depending on how you play it, idealistic. It's optimistic. We're looking for a home for these people who need a home. The other caravan that you get to play halfway through Banner Saga 2 is without giving it a lot away, they're a band of mercenaries. They can get away with acting a lot worse, a lot more selfishly, a lot more like they run into a group of people and they're like, don't take our stuff, and you're like, we're mercenary brigands, essentially. We're just going to kill you and take your stuff. And that's totally how you're expecting. Like, no one's going to chastise you for that because they're your guys. You've been running with these guys for a while. That's how this caravan operates.
Okay, I can appreciate a dynamic like that.
But it still provokes, like, even though you have this switch where you're able to play sort of a darker path with this second caravan, you still get to progress the story quite a bit, like a surprising amount. Like, you wouldn't expect them to. It was one of those things where
they're still on the mission.
The other guys are on a separate mission, which is interesting because it's like my whole thing was when they did the split. I wasn't sure. I was like, okay, they want me to just play like these bad guys because they're being kind of morally gray but mostly evil kind of deal. But then it started hitting a lot of the story points, and it started hitting a lot of interesting, like, crazy stuff. And I was like, whoa, I can see where twist is going, and it was not, like, you can see where it's going, but, like, it was not a twist that you expected, which is really cool. And I was impressed by their ability to make that happen with something that I essentially equated to, okay, we're following the bad guys, or, if not the bad guys, the anti-heroes.
Essentially.
Yeah. But it was a nice juxtaposition in Banner Saga 2. Which,
people who are willing to cross more lines to get to their goal.
Yeah, and I was happy about that. But in Banner Saga 2, there's a moral dilemma where it's literally like, okay, you have your main caravan, and then you have this advisor guy who has just been a huge jerk to you the entire time. He's been questioning your leadership. He's been questioning, your place in the caravan. He's been like, why shouldn't I lead with my crazy axe person? And you're like, maybe because I have bigger axe people? And he's like, but you have a point where they're like, we're not going to be able to get over this bridge that's falling apart. What should we do? And your options are like, just keep moving faster, drop some of your hard-earned supplies, knowing that there's a town right afterwards that you can pick up more supplies, or signal some of your big axemen to knock that guy and the rest of his people off the bridge, essentially. And you get to sort of choose like how that goes.
Well, I always find that in those kind of situations, unless the character is clearly an antagonist, that those secondary characters that are struggling for power can sometimes be useful. But I'm tending to think more in lines of like my previous experience with similar games, like Mass Effect. It's an old game.
Right.
I feel like I can spoil things.
But
safely.
It's a solid game that people should play if you haven't played it. And if we do spoil it, close your ears for the next however many.
It's not a tremendous spoiler, but in Mass Effect 2, 3, it's been a while. You have a crew member, Tali. She's a Quarian, the people in the suits. Very, very recognizable.
Yep.
You go to her people who all live on spaceships, and not relevant to the story, but essentially their people have to make a very important decision, and you get to weigh in on that. And one character that gets to be very influential and end up fighting very heavily against your cause is this other guy in like pink and white armor, who's one of like the 3 or 4 people that have
Major Council of Captains.
Yeah, Major Council. Like they're essentially their governing body.
Right.
And he's like the civilian leader. He's of the civilian wing. So he's arguing. He's saying like this is unsafe. These ideas are too ambitious. Blah blah blah. But you clearly need to make a decision. And ultimately, after everything's said and done, you find out he's much more in your favor than you realize. He is just essentially voicing his concerns for his people. Which
makes sense.
And in that scenario, I kind of see that other character. Again, I haven't played. I don't really know.
But it's a question of like, okay, we're following you, but are you a skilled leader? Is this putting my people in danger? And if you make the decision, hey, I want my big guys to kick you off the bridge, well, then he's right. You aren't that great of a leader for his people. Like,
exactly. Is this secondary character being the one that's saying, is he challenging you because he's has genuine concern and like foresight, or is he challenging you because he's a power mongering fool?
Well, you'll have to play the game and find out.
The suspense.
I know, but I would definitely
go out and buy it now. We're not sponsored.
Well, one of the reasons why I want to talk about it is because Banner Saga 3 just went on Kickstarter. And they just put up a Kickstarter for it. It just started today. I saw it and immediately sent it to the main members of the Talk Box here. And because I really like this series. And I really like this the studio. They make good work. And they obviously have a very good grasp on the culture that they're working with, the world that they're working with. But they built from scratch, which is very impressive. Because, like, when you play Banner Saga 1 and they first show you the world map, it is so detailed. Like, every little thing. Like, you don't even go to 2/3 of the map. But they have, like, whole things on, who, like, what this area is, who owns it, why it's called this. What all the godstones have their specific gods. They're gods of such and such. The whole thing is very ambitious and impressive.
How relevant are the gods in the story? Do they actually make some sort of impact?
They don't.
Just out of curiosity.
Well, you stop at their godstones, and you get a chance to learn about them. And at the godstones, you can either like not mess with anything. You can just be like, whatever, blah. You can react in a certain way. Or you can usually do a third thing that is related to that god. And when you do that, you usually can get away with a item that you find that'll which is beneficial, and that's another item you don't have to pay for, which is important when you're balancing,
as you mentioned,
the same points for leveling up and the same points for supplies. It's nice to get free items, and some of the items are really good, which I always like. Is sort of for instance, if you solve, I think there's one where you find a puzzle box at a godstone, and if you finish the puzzle box in the right order, based off of the deity's backstory or whatever, you get an item. You get the solved puzzle box, which gives you say +4 to armor break. So whenever you attack an enemy that's within a certain distance, you get +4 to breaking their armor.
So you're saying it's a significant item,
Usually they're significant. If you're looking for them and you're willing to ferret them out, they usually give you a pretty significant bonus, which I like. And that's a nice way of being investigate our world a little bit, and we'll give you some incentive. The one thing I'm not sure if regular because I pre-ordered Banner Saga 1, and when I pre-ordered Banner Saga 1, I got Trigvi, who is a pre-order exclusive character. He's essentially an insane spearman who everyone really likes. The only thing that I know, he was a pre-order bonus. I'm not sure if they still offer him as DLC to get, but he wasn't he didn't play a huge role in the story. But what's interesting is he does play a bit of a role in Banner Saga 2, and I know that your progress from 1 transfers to 2. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. I do know that if you, I think I have to go over the details again, but if you back at a certain level on the Banner Saga 3 pledge Kickstarter page, you get Banner Saga 1 and 2 for free. So it makes it a good incentive to back the third one, and then be able to play all 3 in one huge marathon, which is great.
Okay.
I'm just a huge fan. I'd recommend everyone go out and get it.
Yeah, sounds like an interesting game. Right before we started, you were saying that it hit a number of things that you like about storytelling games specifically, right on the head. What were some of those points you were going to bring up?
It's a diverse world, and they hint at a lot of things that are going to happen later in the story, but only through hints. Without spoiling a lot.
So it has a lot of mystery and stuff to unravel about it.
So for instance,
that's what you're saying.
I'm gonna say this, and this is when you get a chance to do a dialogue with Trigvi, the crazy spearman.
This is the DLC character.
This is the DLC character. The pre-order character.
Yeah.
He's a crazy person. He's bathing, he's swimming in a lake, fully clothed, with his spear by his side, in his hands, he comes out of the water. He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's a crazy person, and you're like, "Hey, Trigvi, what's up?" And he says a bunch of crazy person babblings. So you talk to him for a bit, and at the end, he's like, "Hey, don't trust men with helmets. You can't see their faces, so you know they're lying." And then, much later in the game, the dudes with helmets super betray you. At least one of them does, and that comes back, and you're like. It's such a throwaway line in the beginning that I didn't see it happening. I was so whoa, and it's a named character. It's a character that you don't really expect, and it's a character that
spoiler, he has a helmet. He
has a helmet, but you've put points into him. He's been a part of your party, and he betrays you in a pretty major way, and it messes you up. You're oh, that was one crazy betrayal. But Trigvi warned you, dude. And I was just very impressed by that. I was impressed by just they made me care about characters, and with the 2 different caravans in Banner Saga 1.
It's definitely a good sign of good story development. Yeah.
It's very good.
Immersive. It's immersive.
And after the trials and tribulations that they make you go through with Banner Saga 1 with these characters, and the chances for them to die, and the characters that do die because of your mistakes and stuff, when you play Banner Saga 2, it means a lot more. And there are times when some group won't agree with you in Banner Saga 2, and then they'll like leave your party, and like maybe they'll join the mercenary guys because they're like, oh, there's a better chance for coin. But I'm like we went through so much together. Why did you leave my like main caravan? Like, didn't I put you through enough battles? Didn't I like level you up enough?
Didn't we build enough bonding?
I thought we bonded. Like, what? Why did you leave me for a crazed lunatic and his band of merry murderers? Like, oh, okay, you just want to swing your sword more, I guess. Whatever. Like, I think literally one of the Varls that like leaves your party and joins the other party is like, yeah, things were getting a little too optimistic. They were really going on that whole hope train, and I wasn't really buying it. I'm just kind of in it for coins, so just give me some coins and I'll hop too.
His goal is to further himself in this failing world,
right?
Not this whole.
Well, it's Banner Saga 2. There's definitely two camps in Banner Saga 2, and that's we're going to have to survive because it's the end of the world. We have to band together, and it's the end of the world. Let's just like play it by ear and do what we do best, and if we all go down with it, then that's the nature of the world. And you get a lot of that. Like, you get a lot of people who are like, so I'm either going to go down swimming or like get out of here.
Yeah.
Or find somewhere where I can get out of here.
Okay, I enjoy that. I enjoy that from a narrative perspective.
And I will say Banner Saga 2 does a lot more when it comes to environments. They add like barricades that you have to bust through. They add different types of enemies. So like where normally you just be fighting dredge or people, now it's like dredge, people, centaurs, swamp folk, and other groups. And they add like bonus objectives. So for instance, if there's one where if you bring a certain character, he's like, hey, these swamp folks use trained bears in combat, and you're like, yeah? It's like, I kind of want one, because we've done this back in my hometown. We also use bears for stuff sometimes, which was weird, but we still did it. Tell you what, if you can lower that bear's health by a certain amount and bring me near it and let me use my ability, I might be able to tame that bear. And then if you do that, he tames a bear, and that becomes one of his abilities, is basically summon war bear, and the bear just like shows up and mauls dudes, which is pretty good.
If the bear dies, does it?
He doesn't get the bear. He doesn't get the ability.
No. If he summons
if it dies in combat?
Yeah, if he summons the bear later on,
he can still do summon bear.
Okay, cool.
It's not I've never had the bear die because it's a pretty tanky bear, but it's one of those things where like having that as an ability takes a character that normally you wouldn't bring because he's not like a giant with an axe.
Yeah.
And makes him a little more diverse because instead of a giant with an axe, you have a regular man with a regular axe who doesn't have much in the way of abilities, but he summons a bear every once in a while, which is great. Which really adds to like adding an extra dude to your party. Perfect, love it. But no, Banner Saga, just in general, is man, I can't recommend it enough.
Well, good. You've clearly voiced your that speed limit sign was upside down.
Yeah, that'll do it. That's how we know we're in the car.
Yes, you've clearly voiced that. It sounds like a good game. I'm definitely intrigued. You've sold me on it.
All right,
I'll probably be backing Banner Saga 3 with interest.
Excellent.
I don't really know what to follow that up with.
I mean, well,
I have. What games have you been playing lately?
What games have I been playing lately? Oh, I finally finished Mafia 3.
Oh, I saw you playing that today.
Yeah, I finished it because I had worked myself up to the very last mission, and then I had said I want to like get all the weapons and finish all the stuff.
You wanted to essentially make sure before the credits rolled and kicked you out
that I'd hit everything that I wanted.
You got to see everything you wanted to see. I can understand that.
Here's the thing I didn't, because they added racing and car customization last couple weeks ago, and I had only just seen it, and I was like, okay, cool, stuff that I don't really want to do, because it was a lot of work for something that I didn't really have an interest in.
Fair enough. And open world sandbox games like that are, kind of designed to where you're not supposed to necessarily do it.
Well, I'm not like a racing fan, I guess is my thing. And
gotcha.
That's one of my main kind of things is like, oh, you're the boss of a criminal underworld. Well, better go on personal races to like make yourself some kind of hotshot driving ace. Like, I own the entire city through my various underbosses. Shouldn't they just be getting me like have them get some grunts to learn how to race cars and have them do all the races for me.
But then you wouldn't get the thrill of racing.
But then I wouldn't get the thrill of driving in a circle a couple times. Which, I mean, they do a good job. Like, they're solid races, and the upgrades are great if you're into upgrading cars and stuff. But, like...
Are the upgrades unlocked by doing the racing, or just from when they added the racing?
Some are... I think it's when they added races, they also added customizable garages for customizable cars. So now you can upgrade performance, you can upgrade tires, you can upgrade your paint job and stuff. But again, it's some of the stuff you have to unlock through races and winning races and being first in the races, which is fine. It's totally expected. But I think I would enjoy it a lot better if it was something I could do earlier in the game. Because again, I had played all the way up to the very last mission, which makes it a little hard for me to like... So like, I'm about to have a final confrontation with the main bad guy, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go and gun him down, but first I got to race a bit. And like, you do races, and that's fine, but like, again, it sort of takes out the... There's no real rush to do the races. And I was like, this doesn't really give me anything story-wise. It's just kind of added in. So I was a little disappointed by those. And if there was one thing I had to sort of criticize Mafia 3, well, like, okay, Mafia 3 is a good open-world sandbox game. I'll say that. Like, the stuff that I saw, great. The stuff that I did, great. Things that were boring at times, there were definitely times when if I was playing a game like GTA or Saints Row...
Very similar game types.
Very similar game types, very similar mission types. But there were certain...
Until you get to, like, Saints Row 4. Then it's a very different game. But go on.
But essentially, like, there are times in Mafia 3 where you have to... So, like, you take over a business, and then you have to increase the amount of money that business makes.
Have you ever played The Godfather?
Yes, I have.
I have played The Godfather too, and it's very reminiscent of all what you're saying.
Yes, it's very taking over businesses and doing that. I very
much enjoyed that game.
It's kind of like that, but with a little less hands-on.
Okay.
I think.
Well, I think one of the cooler aspects of The Godfather was being able the assassinations you had to do in, like, for
those were good.
Very specific ways.
You ever played The Godfather 2?
Yeah, that's the only one.
Because that's a great one. That's better than The Godfather 1. I'll tell you right now.
I hope so.
Well, because Godfather 2 has, like, squad combat and the hierarchy to assassinate, which is cool. This game has... The only thing that they really do with... like, once you can either kill or hire, essentially, everyone in the organization except for the very top of the enemy organization.
So you can, like, bribe them.
Well,
that's an option?
It's more of you have a knife to their throat, and you choose to either kill or hire. And if you hire them, then their business starts with a much higher amount of money produced.
Do they have like, is there any risk to hiring them? Do they have a chance to, like, betray you?
No risk. Okay. There's no risk because you've already, like, basically blown up their organization and then stomped in and then jammed a knife right to their throat.
All right.
Essentially, you can either kill them for an instant, like, say I was going after, like, a mid-level, like, mob boss guy, and I go and I got him in a headlock with a knife to his throat. I can either kill him immediately for like $5,000, or I can spare him and have him work for me, and that'll give $10,000 or $20,000 to my racket that he is, like, in charge of. Because you're basically just showing up, taking the old management and deciding whether or not you need to start fresh, or, you know, keep people who are already established and who already know their job. Then, once you've taken over a district, you assign it to one of the 3 underbosses that you have. People who liked Mafia 2 will recognize Vito. I forgot his last name.
I feel like we're talking a lot about, like, mechanics tonight. We need, like, diagrams to show people. And
the important thing to remember is that there are like 5 districts in the city. You give them to your underbosses. If you don't give enough districts to your different underbosses, they'll eventually rebel against you, and then you have to kill them. But if you give them certain benefits, they'll give you bonuses. And they'll give you different bonuses. So, like, if you give, this district to this person, they'll give you a gun for free. It's a neat gun.
Okay, so but you essentially pick your reward upon acquiring them.
But if you're not careful, then they'll turn on you entirely, and then you have to kill them.
And that's just the way. Hey, that's just more things for you to do, right? You know, fun things.
A little bit. Well, that was I liked having them all on my team, so I was very like diplomatic about like I gave each one like 2 districts out of the 6 or so the districts that there are, and they were like okay with that. They were like, okay, well, none of us killed each other, great, because they're all conflicting personalities. But like, I think my original point was they have territory. You have to increase their earning in that territory. So you drive out to a location where they tell you there's a truck or a boat or a car full of blank illegal item.
Gotcha.
Be it bales of marijuana, guns.
Insert illegal item here. Truck.
Yeah, exactly. You show up, you kill the group of rednecks that are guarding it, because it's always rednecks. Then you hop in the vehicle and you drive it back to whatever that location was, and you drop it off. Now, in a Saints Row or a GTA game, you kill all the rednecks, you hop in the car, and then you drive back, and then you have a pitched gun battle, like while you're driving the car or the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? And that makes it exciting. That gives some risk to, like, oh no, they might do enough damage that my car explodes, and then I have to redo the whole thing.
Actually, I've been very actively watching a lot of I haven't touched GTA 5. It's been out for 3 years now.
Yep.
It actually came out first on the 360 and is still going pretty strong, which is impressive in its own right. But they keep updating it, and one of the more recent updates had some very interactive multiplayer, like drug running missions with their new cars, where like you actually have to, in the middle of a gunfight, have one of your players, like an actual other person, sit there and like mash X to put drugs into a bag, while the other person, like the camera like zooms in, and the only thing that person can see is their person putting drugs in a bag, while all your teammates have to hold off waves of goons. But I think it's a very interesting way to make it more dynamic.
Right.
Like that little mechanic.
Well,
small things.
Here's the thing. Mafia 3 does none of that. You just kill the rednecks, you take the truck, and then you drive back to the warehouse and drop off the truck.
Nothing.
No one tries to stop you. You've killed all the rednecks, so no one tries to get you.
Well, that's slightly more realistic.
It's a little more realistic, but it's a little more disappointing, because it turned into because it's a rinse and wash and repeat. And the same with stealth mechanics. I felt like the stealth in the game was a little too powerful, if that makes sense.
No.
Because, okay.
Well, think back to, like, Skyrim. The joke was always about Skyrim was that if you wanted to play stealth, you essentially just want to elongate your game because you were walking slower. Right. Like, you always killed the people. Yeah. But you were just slower.
Well, here's the thing. So, I can think of an exact perfect example. I had just killed a boss and thrown him out of a window of a tall skyscraper. Yeah. And I take the elevator down to the lobby, and there's a bunch of goons who have just entered the lobby that's full of civilians. The civilians are running out of the lobby because there's armed goons now. I'm still hiding in the elevator, and one of the guys sort of sees me, but doesn't see me enough to like really draw his gun, so he goes to investigate. I'm hiding in the elevator.
How big is this elevator?
It's about
standard size, or is it like one of those? It takes place in an older time. Yeah, and the elevators were smaller.
It's a smaller elevator. It's not like a deep elevator, but like I'm just using like the buttons as like cover essentially. Gotcha. And as the guy comes up to investigate, I reach around, stab him in the mouth, and drag him stealth kill wise into the elevator. I do this another 10 times. Oh god. Because people keep coming to investigate the guy who just got killed, and they don't see me until it's too late, and then I stab in the face, and then that happens. And I'm like, okay, cool, 10 guys, perfect.
Now, see, when I get to that point in the game, at first I think it's cool, but then after a while I'm like, is this unless you get a specific thrill out of glitching the game, because we have some friends that love finding loopholes in games and mechanics and stuff like that. But I personally, after a while, would prefer to do something like go out and charge and see how far I get. Exactly. Like, well, that's when I play Fallout, I tend to play in power armor a lot, and then after a while, if I get too powerful, I like to look for ways to enhance the danger, I guess. Right.
Well, with this, I ended up just stacking, because I killed like 10 guys, and I'm like, okay, I can just walk out, and then reinforcements came. But they still couldn't find me. So I ended up stacking about 40 dead bodies like cordwood inside of a elevator meant for like maybe 2 people comfortably. And then I just walked out of the building, and they're like, avoid pursuit. And I'm like, there's no one here. I've killed all of them. And I just like walked a couple blocks down, and then it was like, mission complete. Or there was another one where I'm supposed to like tail a politician as he visits like prostitutes and stuff, and then like kill him when his security isn't looking. But as he's leaving the courthouse, I just pulled out a bazooka and blew up his car, and then just escaped the ensuing police chase. Like, there are ways around it, but the ways that I did were like the most direct ways in a lot of cases, and they worked a little too effectively.
Sometimes I appreciate that you can be creative that way, but other times I do feel like you're cheating the game.
Well, it was one of those things where if it was... I get when you're like, okay, I'm, playing tactically, I'm playing this way, and then but like, if you wanted us to... So, like, for instance, that tailing that politician, that had, like, probably tons of set pieces and stuff that it would have gone through. Like, there are whole, like, levels that I didn't even get to see, because as he was hopping into his car, I just blew up his car from the beginning of that convoy that he was in. So, like, I felt a little disappointed that I was clever, I guess, because I would have gotten at least maybe another... I would have maybe added on like another 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay, just tailing this guy and trying not to get found out, and doing that.
As something just, dynamic and interesting to do.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it's just, like, once you've done a thing once, I feel like Mafia 3, except for some of their main missions, you do it, like, a bunch of times the same way.
Yeah.
And so really what you're there for is you're there for an open world set in a time period that doesn't get a lot of open world, a setting that doesn't get a lot of open world play, which is, Louisiana in the 1970s, I want to say. It's 70s or 60s, I'm not sure. But it's like Vietnam War, like your character's a Vietnam War vet. Jack Kennedy just died. JFK just got assassinated recently.
There's some pretty narrow time frames.
So you're getting... But it's not... I'm just sort of, talking, because I'm not super exact. It's been a little while since I, actually cared about the time frame of the game.
After a while, it just kind of falls away as you're playing the game.
Well, like, there are parts that are very, like, that you're in this time frame, because, like, you're fighting, like, Ku Klux Klan members in, Volkswagens and, like,
well, you play as an African-American, right?
You play as an African-American.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a reoccurring topic, especially for the time period. Where
and it's definitely... They do a good job of making it, like, a racially charged issue. And, like, a racially charged game. A game that acknowledges that racism happens, I guess, is an important way to look at this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of our history. It happened.
Yeah.
We shouldn't, like, just glance over it because it's a touchy issue.
I was a little worried, because, like, for most of the game, you're taking over criminal enterprises, and then there's one part of the... Like, there's one neighborhood that's all, like, KKK members, essentially.
Yeah.
And for the first half of the game, you've been, like, taking over... like criminal organizations once you've like eliminated their leadership, but like I was like, so I don't want to like be a member of the Klan.
Yes.
Like that would be a little odd. But thankfully they're just like, oh no, you take over the supermarket that they were based out of, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do that, no problem. That's totally cool. But they do acknowledge a lot of points, and they do a good job of on a lot of stuff. It's just that some of their gameplay stuff doesn't fall through.
It gets repetitive.
It does get repetitive, so...
I can see that.
Yeah. But it's one of those things.
Yeah.
All right, so that's really all the time we have for this episode of Boxcars. Sorry, Pat, we didn't really get a chance to talk to you about...
Not a problem. I'll get it all in on the next one.
Solid. Well, I hope you folks enjoyed listening. And, hey, if you want more quality TalkBox content...
Follow us on, look us up on Twitter. We have a lot of our stuff on YouTube and...
iTunes, Facebook.
iTunes, yep. All on Facebook. Follow the pages.
Yep. Follow all those. And thanks for listening. This has been Zack.
And this is Pat.
And we'll catch you next time on Boxcars.
Bye.